Hello everyone, welcome to Tag Talks Next Up in Fashion, the podcast for fashion designers, emerging fashion brands and fashion industry news. I'm Nick Sutton-Smith.
I'm Janae Green.
And I'm Asia DeVar Sterling.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is I think our fifth episode now, so if you have any feedback, please do let us know. You can find us on Instagram at the House of Tag, and we have our second guest with us today, who I'll introduce briefly in a second. I think we should probably just say, because it's the holiday seasons and it's just 2020 in general, audio might be a bit dodgy today because people are in different places. We're pretty global, this podcast, and there's a few issues, but just bear with us on that. I think we should just, having said all that, hand over to only our second ever guest on Tag Talks Next Up in Fashion. Rachel, would you like to introduce yourself and just give us a brief run through of who you are and what you do?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm Rachel Fischbein. I'm the executive director of the Fashion Incubator in San Francisco. We are a nonprofit organization. We've been established for almost 10 years. Our 10th anniversary is coming up in March, so we're excited to celebrate that. We're an organization that is designed to support the local Bay Area fashion community. We do it in a variety of ways, with events, with the designer in residency program, now a lot of digital content, and we're here to ensure that people who are both fashion professionals and fashion designers are getting the resources they need to succeed with their business in the Bay Area.
Nice. And just for someone who is completely new to the world of fashion incubation, do you want to explain just in layman's terms what that means?
Yes, of course. So what it means is we're looking for brands who we've seen them have a little bit of success getting started. We can see that there's a market for their products. They're getting a little bit of notoriety. And we say, there's something here. There's a brand that if we put some resources and some mentorship behind it, they're going to grow. And so what we do is we bring them into the program for 6 months to a year and a half. We have a beautiful studio space in downtown San Francisco that has offices as well as cutting boards, sewing machines, so everything they need to be running their business on the day-to-day. And then they're meeting with mentors who are experts in the fashion industry. Many of them, of course, are in the Bay Area, and they are working with them on different sectors of their business. So that might be the fit of their products, that might be the marketing, it might be the financials, they might be trying to figure out how to get new wholesale accounts, and we have mentors for each one of these different segments. And so we're together with them working on these different aspects of their business, trying to get them the resources and education that they need, and of course the connections as well. Many of our businesses are run by immigrants, people who have just shown up to the Bay Area a couple of years ahead of time, so they don't have the connections that many of our mentors who have been in the industry for years have. And so part of it as well is just bringing them into the community and helping them get more established so they can really succeed with their businesses. For us, the goal is for them to succeed, to grow, and then they will be making new hires inside of the fashion industry. We've seen over the last 10 years over 500 jobs developed by our brands. So it really does work to start first with the brands, incubate them, and then help them make new hires inside of the fashion community in the Bay Area.
That's amazing, Rachel. I really respect what you're doing. I really am interested in hearing about what's changed over the past year and how you operate. Are any of the brands coming to you with brand new pain points, or is it the same as always?
It's a great question. Yes, 2020 has been a unique experience for everyone. Definitely some new pain points. We were very fortunate that we were able to do a lot of pop-up shops, and we are located all on the selling floor of Bloomingdale. So we were able to host these big events, have people come. The traffic of the mall was really great. And a lot of our designers, people kind of stumbling through and finding them. And so one major pain point that our designers continue to talk about is the expense and the difficulty of online marketing, because you have to make a lot of digital assets, photo shoots, right? Things that are constant content to update your newsletters, your social media accounts, and then the paid for advertising. It can be very expensive for these brands to be marketing on Facebook, Instagram, Google, and then the SEO components too. So huge new challenge for them to be discovered when we're not able to do the kind of shopping events. We used to do a lot of Shop the Studio and pop-up shops, and now we're trying to drive traffic to their stores online, which is a totally new challenge for them.
And given how things are changing this year, and like you said, brands are coming with brand new pain points, what would be your biggest tips moving forward into next year for startups who are kind of just breaking into the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I would say is collaboration is key right now to find brands or accessories or houseware companies that might have a similar audience to you, and to share in the marketing dollars, basically, to say, okay, we're going to build up a photo shoot together, we're going to host this event together, we're going to do something with each other. I think it's very hard right now for brands to go at it alone. So to think about sharing your audiences and introducing your audiences to each other to expand that target market is one of the best ways a brand can thrive during this time. The other thing too to think about is how you can collaborate with retailers or work with them in some capacity that may not be the traditional wholesale model. We saw at the beginning of 2020 a lot of wholesale orders being canceled, unfortunately, because the retailers had to either close down their shops, or they saw huge limitations in traffic coming to their stores. And so can you find ways to have more of a consignment relationship, a drop shipping relationship, something where it's more of a win-win, that they don't have to worry so much about the investment up front, and you can figure out a way to work with them in a creative way to bring more traffic to them as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially when you think about how these polymath brands like Amazon are really the market leaders and they're the winners at the moment. How do you think that brands are going to be able to compete as these kinds of big conglomerates kind of grow and grow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a difficult question, and certainly some of it is deciding whether or not you want to get on board, whether or not you want to be part of those platforms. And we are seeing companies like Amazon, like eBay, Etsy's been around for a long time, trying to partner with small brands. So in some ways, it's is there a way that it can fit for you? We are seeing Amazon now trying to get more into the fashion space and figuring out how to make that a more curated shopping experience. And so perhaps it's, instead of trying to beat them, go with them, if it feels like something you can do with your business.
And so do you think it's in these smaller brands' best interest to be collaborating with these bigger houses and these bigger companies, or do you think that they can pave their own way without tapping into the bigger companies' resources?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the values of your brand and the ethos that you're trying to develop. For some brands, it might not work for the type of values that you're holding for your company and that your customers are aligning with. So for some brands, their customers really love having it be a loyal small following. They like the feeling of it being a curated experience for them. They want to feel like it is this kind of local. They discovered a unique talent, and so for those type of businesses, jumping onto a platform like Amazon is probably not the right fit. Your customers like having that kind of unique experience. Of course, you need to make sure that you have enough of those customers to keep your business afloat. So there's always a push and pull there. But if your brand is something different, where maybe you are selling just one or two types of products. Maybe you're really passionate about making the best backpack for a certain type of lifestyle. It's a backpack that's great for commuters, and you really care about pushing that messaging. Amazon or eBay or any of those kind of bigger platforms might be the place for you, because you're trying to serve a utilitarian need for your customers, and it's not necessarily about a value system in place.
And this is kind of switching gears a bit, but speaking of eBay, I feel like they have a really big footprint in the secondhand space where people used to sell their designer goods all the time on eBay, but I feel like they've kind of taken a back seat recently, especially with companies like The RealReal and, those other big companies becoming more prominent. And what they're doing now is tapping into like more of an Amazon model. Do you want to talk about that and how you see that going for them?
Yeah, it's such a fascinating question, because in some ways eBay's been out in front of the secondhand market for much longer than anybody, and yet you hardly hear that much about them, like you were saying with RealReal and Poshmark leading the way, ThreadUp. We are seeing a lot of these other secondhand marketplaces, and actually what I've been finding eBay doing that's quite interesting is they're trying to push not so much on secondhand right now, but more just on small businesses generally. They have a bunch of workshops now, classes. They actually have a podcast themselves for small business owners. They just did a grant program, which I think was $10,000 for people who are selling on eBay as small businesses. And none of the messaging was very focused towards the secondhand market. It was kind of, now they're pivoting more into, you can buy new products as well on eBay. So they are making a messaging switch, and their focus seems to be moving away from secondhand, which is really interesting, seeing how many other retail platforms are moving towards the secondhand market offerings.
And for those platforms that are moving into the gap that eBay is sort of leaving with the secondhand market, what do you think they need to do to become the dominant force in that area that eBay was, for the longest time?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that for secondhand marketplaces, you really need to establish trust and consistency with your customers. For one thing, customers need to feel secure that if they're buying a product that is coming from a luxury label, that it is an authentic piece, that you have some kind of checks in place to make sure that indeed the products are coming from the labels that they said they are coming from. And that's where we are seeing partnerships with luxury brands and these secondhand spaces. So we're seeing, RealReal partnering with Gucci. I think, it's helpful for customers to have that trust that indeed these are authentic Gucci bags. The other thing too is, and I think, Poshmark has to work through this, which is the consistency of the quality of the items, because unlike the RealReal, where it's a centralized system, all the products get sent to the RealReal and then people shop the platform. With Poshmark, it's a peer-to-peer shopping system, so they have to ensure that they have trusted sellers on the platform who are selling products that are not damaged, that are coming from households that maybe don't have smoke or perfumes, things that might turn off customers when they receive it. And again, thinking about with people shopping online, especially now with Amazon, they expect quick shipment. So communication as to how quickly things are supposed to arrive and in what conditions. So those are real challenges for the secondhand selling platforms.
That centralized way of selling seems to be from my perspective, seems to be like the way forward. Like StockX, how they sell and buy, how you buy and sell shoes there, that seems to completely have dominated the shoe market and the resale shoe market, primarily off of the centralized system.
Yes. So the centralized system is great for the consumer and difficult for the platform because you have all these one-off SKUs, right? So you have to keep track of all these one-off products and then think about what do you do with it when they don't sell. So I've been to these warehouses before where it's just like, you know, every product is on a shelf and they're massive because they don't have 10 of one item. And that is the benefit with companies partnering with brands, so they can be the new off-price seller for it. Because otherwise, you've got to photograph every piece, right? You've got to describe every piece, you've got to store it, and then you've got to find it again to pack it and ship it. And so that's it's a lot of overhead for one sale.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like there's kind of a missing link in technology that can make those processes a lot more efficient. So we can enhance the sustainability of like decentralized circular brands, but also make sure that they're not putting a lot of money and time into these processes that aren't going to give them big returns. So with that in mind, with kind of new business models, what would you recommend the brands on your incubator kind of go for and work with going into 2021?
So, I do love these brands that are doing the love it and then return it for something new models. I think Patagonia is doing a fabulous job with that, which is, you're wearing the products for a year or two, and then you return it to them. What's great about that is you're creating that customer loyalty, that reason for them to come back to you. And if you're able to then also provide a discount as they return it back to you, that's a really exciting offering for customers because they feel like, okay, if I bring this back, I get something new. It's that sort of fun return model. And so it's in some ways, we're seeing rental companies do this, but to think about it as more, they purchase it and they know where to bring it back to. And if a company can figure out how to efficiently reuse those materials or sell the products to somebody else, that's even better, to be in control of both the primary purchasing and the secondary purchasing. And now you've got a great business model where you get to sell the product twice. You get to make money off of that product twice, which is really great for a small business to be able to do that. So if you're able to offer something like that as a new brand, I think it's an incredible opportunity.
And do you have any kind of key tips or insights in how a small brand can actually operate in all of these different kinds of markets, with all these different kinds of partnerships, whether that be becoming circular, actually looking at their supply chains, all these different ways that they can kind of become more sustainable and really reach new customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's definitely deciding what aspects of sustainability you want to focus on. And there's this real push-pull between products that last forever and products that are easy to decompose. So we've seen some brands, considering themselves sustainable because they're incredibly durable goods. They're goods that can be, the jacket you're going to have for the next 20 years. And there is something sustainable about that, right? Like that it's built to last. You only need one of these products. And then we see companies going the totally opposite way, which is it's biodegradable, right? And so the idea of, well, which lane do you want to be in with the type of materials you're going to use? Because that's going to determine how you try to be as circular as possible. Because for the really durable ones, it's then thinking about, okay, how can I tear these apart, clean the fabrics in a way that will feel, good for the next owner? What do I need for that process? Will there be any waste within that? And for the ones that are more on the biodegradable sides, okay, so what limitations are there then? It might be that you're not going to put zippers in any of your pieces, or you're only going to use certain types of buttons, like shell or wooden buttons, something like that. So it's thinking about what is the end ideal for my product and designing backwards from there.
And I think, we talked about the love it and leave it model, but what do you think about these rental companies like Rent the Runway, and there's this new one, or at least it's new to me, Wardrobe, who are doing a not so occasional rental. So Rent the Runway was more occasion focused. It had dresses for galas and, things like that. But this new model is you rent a piece or some pieces for a few weeks, wear them, and then return them. Do you think that has potential to be a successful business model for brands to get behind?
Well, successful for a brand, I think that's yet to be seen. We see a company called Vince. They're doing a thing called Unfold, and so it's just Vince products. So, it's the rental, but only for one brand. And their hope, of course, is that you fall in love with these pieces and you'll want to purchase one or two of them and send the rest back. And so in some ways, I think of it as almost like a long-term trial or long-term, try on to see whether or not you like it. I don't know yet how successful that is for one singular brand to do. What is interesting is companies like Rent the Runway, they are creating their own in-house labels because I think it's less expensive for them, and they also have all of this user data on what customers tend to like, so they're able to design silhouettes in that way. But I think the rental market is difficult for, particularly for a singular brand to get customers to continue to wear them on a subscription base, to make that feel valuable enough for them, and then to think about how do you as a company deal with the shipping, the cleaning, the restocking. I think it's hard for a small brand to get into that space.
So I think it would be really interesting for us to hear about some key takeaways you found from brands that have gone through your incubator program and that might be useful for smaller startups that are coming into the market right now.
Sure. It's a big question. One thing I would say that I think is important for all brands to consider is, what is your personal goal for what is going to make this business feel like a success for you? We've seen a lot of brands that they start with a financial goal in mind as to how many sales they want to make that year, what's their desired profit for the year, but they're not really thinking about what that profit number does for them, for their own lives. And so I think it's starting first to say, how much money do I need for my life to be where I want it to be in the next year? So thinking first about not just, what does this do for the brand, to put a kind of a number on it, but how are you going to feel kind of a sense of joy and success from hitting a certain number. And then working backwards, many of our brands, they start by thinking more on how many pieces, but once you figured out your number for what you need for your life, then you go, okay, how many pieces do I need to sell to hit that number? So working backwards from the end goal, I think, is so key and often overlooked by many brands. It's a super common mistake that we see with our businesses. So if you're saying, okay, this year I want to sell $1 million worth of products, and I'm hoping that when I sell that, 30% of it is profit that I can take home. Okay, that gives us a great number. That starts, for us to be able to work with it. Okay, then how many pairs of pants do I need to sell? And how many handbags do I need to sell? And what are the price points those need to be sold at to hit that? And then how much do I have to be able to sell on for operating expenses? So what are my fixed operating costs? And then for each one of those products, what is going to be the cost of the raw materials? And so we work our way backwards from there. And I think that is a much more successful and sustainable way for you to run your business versus the opposite way around, where we often see businesses that are they're creating products, they're creative, so they're designing things, they're making stuff, they're putting a price tag on it, and then they kind of are surprised at the end of the quarter how much money they made or didn't make. And so we want to start with the financial goals at the start, and more importantly, starting with the financial goals that are going to work for you, for your business, and then working our way backwards from there.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Some really interesting topics that we've covered there. Covered a lot, actually, in a short period of time. If anyone has found the work that you do interesting and they want to reach out to you and potentially work with you in the future, how could one go about doing so?
Yes, so they can find us on our website at fashionincubator.sf.org. You can also find us on most social media accounts at Fashion Incubator SF, and we'd be delighted to hear from any of you.
Brilliant. So if anyone is listening, please do get in touch with Rachel if that is something that you're interested in. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We've been the House of Tag, bringing you Tag Talks next up in fashion, where we talk about all things fashion. We hope this episode has been valuable and fun. Subscribe to us wherever you're listening to your podcasts, and we will see you next time.